Get ready, pop it, let's go. Intergalactic review from me. Intergalactic review from me. So yes, this is a review of Kid Cudi's latest film and album project, Entergalactic. The title coming, of course, from the song of the same name from the first Man on the Moon album. So, and that song, to give proper context from Cudi, came from a time when he'd moved to New York and met this girl, and they did psychedelic mushrooms together, some stuff like that, and but it's just an encapsulation of like that feeling of being together in that state. So that's fairly useful context for this, because it is about a character called Jabari, played by Cudi, who moves to New York and finds a girl. They don't do any shrooms together, I don't remember. There's certainly things like that happening, but not together. They smoke the devil's lettuce together a point or two, but apart from that, they don't do anything particularly trippy together. So the characters are Kid Cudi as Jabari, who's like a street artist, very an artsy stoner type, in a way, with his friends Jimmy and Kai, played by Timothée Chalamet and Ty Dolla $ign respectively. Meadow is the neighbour, his next door neighbour, who is the love interest, played by Jessica Williams, remember her name. Her best friend Karina, played by Vanessa Hudgens, is kind of like the sex obsessed best friend. He meets his ex as well, Carmen, played by Laura Harrier. And I'm interested in that all the in terms of like the animation, which is quite it's 2D animation, but there are certainly 3D dimensions at play with it, so it's almost like 2.5D. I'm sure that style has been used before. I'm sure it probably has somewhere, but it's certainly very intriguing. But all the actors, from what I know of them, all pretty much look exactly like their characters. So I don't know if that's just very detailed animation or some sort of rotoscope or something, where taking the actual bodies and faces and molding it into the animation itself, because they all basically look exactly like themselves, as if it was a real a live action performance, which is interesting. There's other appearances from Keith David, Jada Smith, Macaulay Culkin, like other cameos appearing throughout. Again, all pretty much looking like themselves, but it is certainly a very interesting style, a very sort of deliberate style, where the animation, the movements are kind of jarring at times, but they do also have moments of fluidity as well. So the actual story, Jabari is his next door neighbour. As he moves in, he doesn't meet her. Well, he bumps into her, but he doesn't properly meet her until a bit later. He first meets his ex, Carmen, in a great moment where a FedEx van appears behind him and then disappears to just leave the ex. Very clever bit there. So they have a one night stand, and he decides that it's not that they're moving too fast, too close, too quickly, and so kind of breaks it off like that. Then he ends up being, you know, disturbed by his neighbours' music. They're having a housewarming party, but when he actually sees her, all's forgiven, and he has a wet dream about her. It's also like, all these characters kind of seem to be up at all hours of the night, but he still seems to have a bit of an issue being woken up at 3:30 in the morning. But as I say, he once he sees her, he gets over it. Then is woken up. Well, then the next morning she comes over to apologise, and he answers the door and shuts it when he realises who it is, so he can sort himself out a bit. Because he still has an erection. It's funny that he seemingly wouldn't have minded answering the door in that state to anyone else but her. But hey, they have a little joke about her music that she was playing, because it was Drew Hill, and it's like, pre-Thong Song Cisco was fire, and post-Thong Song Cisco is whack, which I would just like to point out that Dance With Me came out after Thong Song, so that statement isn't entirely true. But regardless, so then they start properly kind of going out, friends kind of on either side, sort of egging them on to properly do it. Which, I mean, they're not committed to anyone at that time, so it feels a little bit strange that they're not so interested in actually getting it on, seemingly, or they're just trying to avoid that aspect. But anyway, they do, and it's all good, and until there's a little bit of a miscommunication where she finds a text that Carmen sends to his phone because he had been around the previous night and the previous day and accidentally left his hoodie behind, a closure hoodie, keep that in mind. And she sends a picture of herself wearing it, and it's kind of a seductive way, and so this kind of causes a bit of a communication malfunction, which, given the actual situation, is actually quite an innocent one, but Jabari seems to have trouble explaining this, and it just makes the situation worse. And so he basically has to win her back after retrieving his hoodie back from Carmen, leaving the word closure behind on the screen. Subtlety, Cudi. I'm going to give it a go, huh? So that's kind of the basic outline of the story, and they're both like artsy people. She's a photographer, he's a street artist who has basically just been given a commission to turn his art character, Mr. Rager, again from Cudi's previous album work, into a comic character, which seems to go well. There's a little thing with a Puerto Rican guy who works there, tries to buddy up with him, and kind of warns him about making his stuff too dark. He should make it lighter and whiter. I think there's supposed to be a racial undertone there, but I'm not quite sure if if it's spelt out enough. But yeah, but basically it ends up being okay anyway, and he kind of calls the bloke out for it. It's a 90-minute film in kind of roughly 15-minute chapters. The idea was it was supposed to be a proper series, but it's been made into a film instead, with the potential for making it into a longer series or a bigger series later on, which would be interesting to see if that does happen, because so my first impression from the whole film Given like the intergalactic nature, kind of like the trippy nature of the song, um, and that mood, I'm surprised that it wasn't more. I kind of was expecting a bit more of a psychedelic uh, style show. And I mean, there are certainly elements of that. There's a particular, well done sequence where Jabari has a nightmare about being chased by Mr. Rage and then gets saved by the good Mr. Rage dressed in white. Um, which the being chased kind of through windows that turn into boxes that get smashed so he can escape, and it's all quite it's really a really well done sequence actually. Very traditional cartoon style, but because it kind of focuses more on the main thread is the romance story, which kind of does play out in a very kind of typical, almost cliche rom-com style. And again, not in a bad way necessarily, but I certainly felt it was going to be a bit more of a psychedelic experience. But for what it is, it certainly works well. But again, it just means that there's elements outside of the romance that could have been kind of been fleshed out a bit more. Like his work on the comic, which would have been interesting to see, and maybe that will happen in a extended or a future series. Because there's only nothing like earth-shatteringly groundbreaking about it necessarily. It's fine. I say the animation itself is very intriguing. There's a recurring thing where like outside characters talk about their own escapades in different styles of animation. So like Vanessa Hudgens' character Kirina mentions about a thing with a guy in a Japanese sushi restaurant, which is done in anime style, which works really well for that story. I'm not sure what if the other stories are supposed to have any specific reasoning for that, because they're done in very obvious stylistic choices, but I don't know if there's any specific reasoning for that or just to make things a bit different. But the animation itself does look very cartoony but lifelike at the same time, which works well. I mean, the phones in particular, with the messaging systems, all that kind of thing, is animated really well. There's all got a recurring thread as well of Stush meeting app thing, which again gets kind of brought in here and there, which again maybe could have been fleshed out a bit more, but it ends up being that they basically stole information from people. So it's supposed to be like a pastiche on Facebook using people's data and this kind of just general social media kind of thing. But there's that. There's also again some slight racial gags in there. Say from the Puerto Rican guy warning Jabari to make his stuff lighter and whiter. Meadow talks to Karina about not wanting to date white people due to oppression, which is kind of just like left there as a, for lack of a better term, dark punchline, but isn't really expanded upon. And there's a couple of other things with Meadow where Jabari walks around her to be on the traffic side of the pavement, and she says that's the only chivalrous thing about men that she enjoys. But he does do a couple of other things like that that she seems to be okay with. And I don't know, is it, like if they're trying to make her a complex character, then okay, fine. But there's little moments like that that again could have been expanded on or explained a bit better, perhaps. And just general kind of human nature elements to the characters. Like Ty Dolla Sign is basically just a stereotypical hood stoner character who is quite foul imagery of people and women in particular. He doesn't want Jabari to be going out with his neighbour because of an experience that he had with a woman, but when he sees what his neighbour looks like, he's perfectly fine with it. There's I guess like some there's the Meadows' friend Reed, who's like kind of her arts manager, who like has who takes her to like an artsy vagina party where they chase out a person dressed as a penis, and the chairs are shaped like vulvas and all this kind of stuff, which is again I guess a pastiche on New York artsy types. But yeah, so I mean there's certainly good elements in there. The music itself, so the Intergalactic album does pretty much play out chronologically through the film. So the Intergalactic intro is the intro song to the film, and so on and so forth. The album is 15 tracks, including one bonus track, but only up to track 12 actually gets played in the film. So tracks 13 and 14 don't appear in the film, and they are kind of the weaker songs as well. Certainly two of the weaker songs, again just from first impression. I was toying with whether to listen to the music first and then watch the film, but I decided to do it the other way. So I don't know if hearing the music in the film and in relation to like setting the scenes influenced my feeling about the songs I heard. Maybe it was going to be interesting to try doing it the other way around at some points. So the music it's all basically produced by Cudi and Dr. Genius, except for like the lead single "Do I Want," I don't think is produced by them. But as well as them, it's also the songs are also kind of produced with Skrillex appears with them as well, Plain Pat, Evac from Ratatat. These kind of people who Cudi has worked with appear throughout, and it's all pretty much performed by Cudi as well. Ty Dolla Sign appears a couple of times, makes sense being in the film. There's a duo with 2 Chainz, which appears in the film, but is also it's kind of like the kind of strongest trap feeling song, and because of that, it kind of feels a bit weaker. And also, 2 Chainz isn't the best lyrically. Cudi's verse isn't too much better either. Cudi is mostly a singer on this. He doesn't. I think there's only a couple of moments, including that, which he does rap. But a lot of it is performed in his kind of typical Cudi singy rap style. But hinging more on the singing side. Don Toliver appears at the end as well, again in a song which didn't make the film, which perhaps tells you all you need to know. The bonus song features Don Toliver, Dr. Genius, and Steve Aoki. So Steve Aoki's involvement does kind of give it a bit more of a thumping bassy feel to it, and which works for a bonus track. Also, the songs are reasonably, atmospheric. They don't necessarily follow exactly the story that's played in the film, but you can kind of hear from the lyrics how they do kind of match with their scenes, the scenes that they appear in a way. And it's quite similar to the music that Cudi does on Man on the Moon 3, but a bit more stripped back, so not quite as dark, trippy, trappy, Travis Scott kind of style, which does kind of work for the better overall. I believe that all this music was recorded before Man and Music 3, which perhaps explains that as well. The best songs appear, the best Cudi songs appear in the film actually at the beginning is By Design, featuring Andre 3000 from the Passion, Pain and Demon Slaying album. Which is, again, the strongest album, which kind of does outshine a lot of the songs that actually he made for the film. But yeah, the songs aren't bad particularly. They're not necessarily his strongest work, but the atmosphere for the project does work well, and none of the songs are particularly bad or anything, even though there are some which are stronger. It's nice to hear a bit more acoustic guitar and some string elements, and other instrumentation appearing in parts on the songs as well, so that's cool. The actual song Intergalactic doesn't appear at any point, which I thought was a bit of a missed opportunity, but I guess we want to try and keep it as close to this style of music as this current music that was recorded for the film, I suppose. So it would be interesting to see what happens if they take this any further. Whether with Cudi hinting this will be his last album, or something last under the Kid Cudi name. I guess this is an interesting way to go out. Perhaps Man on the Moon 3 would have made more sense for closing that chapter, but the Intergalactic project is a bit stronger overall, I feel, just from that first listen. It'll be interesting to see if any of that ends up on the next Cudi Greatest Hits volume, which is supposed to be coming out at the end of the year, if that's going to play any influence on that. I say both film and music, neither I say groundbreaking particularly, but they're both interesting enough that they they deserve to at least a repeat. I don't know if they're necessarily things that I would go back to over and over again, but certainly things that I would be happy to see. The film has got some nice references in there, and it plays out fine. As I say, as kind of like a standard rom-com, it kind of works well. And as I say, the music, Cudi and Dr. Genius do kind of like score the entire film, I believe. So there are like other instrumental pieces from them throughout, which could have worked on the album itself, maybe some interludes or something. But the album itself isn't particularly long, so it's nice and concise. And the film itself at 90 minutes is pretty concise as well. Again, even if there are elements of it which could have been fleshed out a bit better. Again, we have to see if that does happen in the future. It would be certainly interesting to see a bit more of the comic stuff with Jabari. There's to mention as well, before they properly meet, Meadow is supposed to be a fan of the Mr. Rager character, so it'd be nice to see a bit more of that, perhaps before the two of them actually meet, developed, and sort of the development of the Mr. Rager character, and why she's interested in it and why he creates it and what he uses it for. It's hinted that it's supposed to be kind of like an anti-establishment type, street art character. So yeah, it'd be cool to see a bit more of that. But yeah, in terms of say both of them in terms of projects are fine, and so if this is a lead into Cudi doing, you're going even further with the film and TV work, which obviously he's been doing a reasonable amount of anyway. He certainly has the acting for it. He certainly has the creativity for it. He surround himself with good people by the looks of things. So yeah, I'd certainly be interested to see what happens in the future with it. But until then, I'll have to leave you for another time. Take care.